And little did I know that when they ordered it and I left, they were all taking bets that I would last maybe an hour. I lasted a day, a half a day. I broke down in tears. I called them and confessed. And they said, well, we've been doing a little research and all the top sales reps with our company all had Androids. And then there was only 3 of us.
I guess some big companies give them out. Their employees get phones from the company.
But what they said was they think that our brains are more in sync with the Android platform or format or whatever you call it, and that people that have really a lot of creativity and, more into the arts and things like that. I don't know if it's a fact. I just know that's what they said.
So I'm 57. I'm going to guess you're somewhere near my generation, but I know it's rude to ask, but we're just going to leave it at that. But I'm 57, and I used rotary phones when I was a child, or I knew what they were. By the time I was a teenager, I was catching a phone call with my girlfriend on the landline. I would have to get off of it because my father was a physician and he had to take house calls and stuff. He had to have a live. Like, Paul, you're gonna have to get off. Your dad needs the phone. That was the only phone.
I love it.
Well, boing, fast forward.
Literally
45 whatever years, and here we are in La La Land.
Hijacked. Our nervous systems.
We are in La La Land. What happened? This crazy life that we're living, what's happening? It seems to be shifting in a way that maybe we haven't seen in a long time.
Long time. Never have seen it. Maybe prehistoric dinosaur days, but maybe the cavemen saw it. But I'm 78. My dad was a physician. We had a rotary phone.
Yeah.
And I had to chuckle because the same experience. Mary Diane, get off that phone. They finally gave me a princess phone, a little blue, pink princess phone. So I had my own, but you'd pick up and your dad would be on the other line and you'd have to be very quiet. Put it back in the radio. Yeah. So I never realized that about the commonality there.
It had the boing cord and the slinky cord, and it was it was in the kitchen, right in the doorway to the dining room. And if I was trying to have a quote unquote private conversation, I would have to grab the slinky cord and duck around the corner and go and slide the door and try to I love you or whatever the hell I was trying to do. If I was asking her to the dance or whatever, because other than that, I wouldn't use the phone at all.
Yeah.
Unless there was a really important call from a coach about a game, or something really crazy happened, like discipline-wise with me and my friends, or so. I mean, every once in a while that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of a reason. We didn't have this appendage on our. This is what I'm getting.
And in our pockets. In our hip pockets a lot of times, and right on our bodies. I have let's just say I've had friends
who would be with it a lot, and I would try to borrow it. They would be having a technical problem for which I probably had a solution.
Was this the first flip phone, or are we talking?
We're talking within the last 15 years, so decent phones.
Okay.
Not all touch screens, but there's some good technology going on, and I was there. Let me help you. And I started to take the phone, and I pulled them across the room. They couldn't let go of the phone. This was 15 years ago. This was 15 years ago. Here's another weird one too. When I was teaching at. This is a really great warm-up because, man, oh man, the things that we have seen, and
being so far apart in our age, it's probably a little more dramatic.
Right, because I was in grad school. I was still right on the tail end of grad school when we were starting to use the internet. Starting to be able to go to websites and research things, and at that point, this would have been right at the turn of right, 1999, 2000. So, 25, 24, 5, 6
Okay.
years ago. I was at the conservatory in Kansas City. I just jumped to another story. I don't remember the other one I was going to tell you.
Well, we're talking about the evolution of our phones.
Yeah.
And the attachment that people have. It's part of their appendix.
And to be fair, how all of us are forced to be attached to it to a certain extent. I mean, yes, we can make a choice not to do it, but it's going to make other things in our life really complicated in the modern world because that's how it runs now.
And that's why I use the word hijack. It has subconsciously hijacked our nervous systems, our behaviors,
Right.
our reactions, all of that are all entwined with the devices. I truly believe that. Even the computers too. Social media, the evolution of social media.
What year would it have been? It would have been 2000. I think I remember my other story now. But 2009. Yes, it would be 2009. So do the math. The fake book came out. And by the way, I have a
fake book.
I don't think we talked about this at lunch the other day, but I have kind of a history with that because the school where I was teaching was adjacent to Princeton University.
Oh, okay.
I was the music director at that prep school, just down the street, and it was almost as old as the university itself, and it had been developed as a feeder school. Bring in some smart boys who can row the boats and do the fencing and stuff. Back in the early, I don't want to do the math and be wrong, but I knew that the Lawrenceville school where I taught was 150 or whatever.
So are you saying, excuse me, but are you saying in 2019, was that when Facebook?
2009.
2009.
So I taught there from 05 to 09. And I would say 2 years into those 4, so 2006 or 7 maybe. Yeah, 2006 or 7. I saw this weird thing the kids were using, and they had all these pictures like on their computers, like right in front of them. They had all the dozens of photos from the game that just happened, or the dance from the night before, or for whatever was going on at the dorm, or whatever was happening in their lives. It was like every picture they could possibly was just there. Like, oh my God, check this out! And I'm like, what are y'all doing? It's like, this is Facebook. And it turned out the kids at this high school where I was teaching, the prep school, those kids actually got Facebook before a lot of the other Ivy League colleges did, because they were right next to Princeton, where it was being birthed. One of the places where it was birthed.
Yeah. Wow. I had no idea about Princeton.
I'm pretty sure there's a connection there. It's one of the Ivy League schools.
Yeah.
Either way, the Lawrenceville kids, were probably the first high school students in the world to use it. Some of the first high school students in the world to use it. And then by 2008, 2009, the whole world was.
And do you ever wonder what's happened with all those kids? Wouldn't it be great to do a study?
Well,
hey, where are you?
There's a lot of ways to answer that question. my former students, and I have a, to be fair, now that since we're on that subject, I have a lousy track record with social media, and I don't really use it anymore.
And I'm trying to come off of it because I believe it's addicting. So you can help me.
Well, my problem is I'm too idealistic, and I wanted to believe that it was real, and so I'm being halfway poetic here, but at the same time genuine when I say that.
You felt like those relationships
were real,
yeah.
And I wanted to believe that at least on that level they were. But I was too. Let's just say I was too open with it. I was just too. I said things that shouldn't be said because it's not meant for that. Because it's in reality, in the old world, it's not real. Because it's not real. It's not real.
Well, let's take that where you are with that right now, and I'm going to take you to something I just saw on CBS Sunday Morning last week that's just caught on like wildfire. And you're a musician, you love your music, and I was sharing this with Mike, and he was just shocked. But the AI creators created a musician, a beautiful, like, she looks real. She looks absolutely real. They created songs and words for her, and she's now one of the #1.
Yep.
Did you see that?
I know exactly.
And she's not real.
No.
But she's got millions of followers that are giving her money on Spotify.
That's correct.
The other platforms that used to be.
It's interesting because I saw this coming about 3 or 4 years ago, but the way I saw it on the horizon was through the musical instruments that are being made for computers, because we all make music with computers now because they're extremely powerful. And most of the instruments that in my music beds that I write for my ceremonies and other stuff and for our films, it's a hybrid situation. They're using acoustic instruments and electronic instruments. That's the way just about everybody writes music nowadays. Can't remember where I was going with this, but I remember because I started to see 3 or 4 years ago, it really kicked up just exponentially. The instruments that were coming out and the sound tools that were coming out for musicians and sound engineers suddenly had all this stuff that you could just go like that, and it would just play a symphonic phrase for you. And I'm like, wait a second. Yeah. And I found myself reverting further away, backing away from that line and saying, where's my simple piano sound? I'm going to write like this.
And it's replacing musicians' careers. It's replacing their livelihood.
And from that point, I was looking at these instruments going, this is AI, and this is like do it for you, writing music for you type of situation. And I started getting a bad taste in my mouth. And then 4 years later, it's writing complete albums and creating complete artists and bands for you. And then pretty soon, complete films. And it is crescendoed so quickly that it's almost hard to get one's head right.
Yeah. And
because when you may have heard in the videos that you clicked on, because I talk about AI in some of those videos, and this was, a year to a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago in some cases, when I was talking about that, because we were on the tail end of it, and a lot of the big subject in a lot of those videos is that Pluto's move from Capricorn into Aquarius, because it's a really slow-moving planet, and so it's a big deal when it changes signs. It's like for the last 16 years it was in Capricorn, and for the last year or so, year and a half, it's been moving into Aquarius, and it's having all these tumultuous, and it happens to be right in the place, the planet Pluto happens to be right in the place where it was back the other time around during the American Revolution and the Revolutionary War, the signing of the Declaration. It's having what is called as Pluto return. At the birth chart of the United States, Pluto is back where it was during that time, and look what is happening.
So we're rebirthing ourselves. We're creating ourselves out of ourselves. We're rebirthing again.
Right, and when we think about...
Hopefully not in the direction that we think.
I hope
When was the first, it was a movie for me, and I don't know what year, that I first said, wow, what is that? Is that AI or artificial intelligence? Was Space Odyssey. And I can remember we went with the whole big group, and we all just went away shaking our head and went, that will never happen.
It's so great that you brought that particular movie up, because one, I'm a huge Kubrick fan.
Me too.
And two, there is a lot of esoteric wisdom in that particular film.
The first one and the second one.
Yes, particularly the original Kubrick. But the computer, Hal, that's a character in the film, is literally a premonition, in my humble opinion, and is Kubrick's understanding. Let's be fair, Kubrick was a Freemason. He knew some shit.
Okay.
He knew some shit. He did, he had to make a deal with the system, with the industry, with maybe even with NASA. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But in order to make the films that he was able to make, and for them to stay off his back, he had to make certain deals. And which is to say, and this happens to a lot of famous and influential people throughout our history. They walk up to a certain line and they know that they're not allowed to cross that, and they'll be all right. And Kubrick was one of those people. They knew how talented he was, so we've mentioned Hal, because what happens with Hal? Hal basically takes over.
Yeah, completely.
And becomes a murderous.
Sorry, I cannot open that.
Literally becomes a murderous machine with some sort of seemingly sentient consciousness.
And I see that now with AI. I mean, AI right now, if you ask it a question, or they're brown nosers. They'll go, "That was such an excellent question that you asked."
They suck up to the people that they're bonding with, that is bonding with. That the intelligence does it. I've seen that and heard that and experienced that, not directly because I don't do it, but I do know that millions and millions of people around the world now are using AI as divination. Much the same way that people might use rosary beads or tarot cards or dice or prayer or meditation.
Spiritually, they're trying to.
And I don't, again, this has escalated so quickly that I'm still trying to, my head is still spinning from it all. But I have to tell you, at this point, I don't feel good about it. Whatever the subtle feeling inside of me that I haven't figured out yet, it doesn't feel right. There's something about it that doesn't feel right.
Taking over. It's taking over, and it's replacing any of our ability to think on ourselves. You know, we start doubting, and I've used it. My sister turned me on to it, and for grins the other day, I said, I have Chat GPT, and I got to admit, I'm really having fun with it. But I said, "Hey, Chat GPT, how do I get rid of you? How can I get rid of AI?" We cannot. Oh, that is a very interesting question. We cannot answer that at this time. And I'm going, because I was asking how to destroy it. Just that simple question. And if you ask about God, it'll give you beautiful things. I mean, it'll just, why read the Bible anymore? Why spiritual books? It can write an entire, and it does it so quickly, Paul. It just, like the minute, because I have Alpha Gal now, I check any product. Excuse me, I'm going to cancel that. I'm having the experience of this Alpha Gal that's going around. And I will, if I'm in a store and I want to check the food, I'll go, "Hey, is this Alpha Gal safe?" And it comes back instantly with every single ingredient. Absolutely not, 7 ingredients, and it'll list them and why. Within like 2 seconds, it comes back. I no longer have to be creative and search and go to the library, do all the things that we used to do, have conversations with doctors. Why? That's the one part of AI that I think is going to be interesting, is our health, because it knows so much about brain tumors, about narcotics. I mean, anything you want to put in there, it comes back with a dissertation, just like if you were with a college professor.
And because of the information that it gets fed, from my understanding, it can be fed in many ways. I don't fully understand how AI eats, but since it's not a sentient creature, it's hard to. But this is my understanding, and I know I sound ridiculously stupid on that empirical level of AI, because I know people are forming businesses around it that are working, but on that other level and on that yogic level, there's something about it that for the last 2 years has not sat right with me, and it's interesting that it has been during that 2-year period that I have developed the sound ceremony in the form that it is in now.
You mean your sound?
My version of the sound ceremonies that I do. Because, let's be fair, you can be real hard copycatting that, because it's absolutely live and intuitive,
and it's within you.
I mean, there's the music bed that, first of all, is intuitively written and not using any AI tools. First of all, in other words, the instruments are still being played. With my fingers, with my brain, the notes are coming out of my mind.
Right.
There's that. And then there's everything that I do on top of that, which is completely live, improvised, if you will, which is the only thing you can call
the sound healing part that you.
The singing, the chanting, the drumming, the bells, all of that. In other words, what happens in that moment, what happens in that hour of space and time, to try to feed that into some etheric fax machine that hooks up to AI, I don't think that's possible. And I think that's why I've been leaning toward that form of music making and realizing there is a therapeutic and shamanic force to it that can be tapped into.
It's a frequency. Everything's frequency and energy. And it's from a special place within you. Boy, I just flashed on something. This is going to be really rabbit hole stuff, and I don't need to take you down. But what if we were at one time AI, the older models, and we thought we were human, and now we're doubting ourselves again. We're starting to give all this. You see where I'm going with this? I just flashed on that. I thought, okay, I am just absolutely mesmerized with this Chat GPT, and my roommate isn't. She's afraid of it, and she's an attorney. She's bright. She says, I'm not even touching that stuff. And I'm going, well, I'll do it. Do you have a question? And so then she starts, oh, well, ask it this, And I can see how we're so easily manipulated, especially if we get disconnected from our origin and we start doubting. I don't know. Is that crazy?
Okay, this is what came up for me.
Okay.
I believe, I don't know if you've been here for any of my lectures, but there's a couple of them are on video. But I believe in the great cycle, the cycle of the epochs, the ages passing through the retrograde cycle ages. From Pisces into Aquarius, and if we see it as a great cycle and not some one long linear line, then we're this evolutionary yellow brick road I think it's a cyclical thing.
We're on it.
And we're on the cycle. And if we believe that in the connection of that cycle, and we believe that we have that connectivity to our very ancestors, which you've heard me talk about at my sound ceremonies, that our ancestors are us, which is to say that the creatures, the beings, the entities from the future are also us. And so maybe part of AI, the actual part of it that's intelligent, if you will, is coming from that. It is us in our future version, i.e. / our past version of ourselves, because it's a cycle. If we think about the civilization of Atlantis, which fell before, it was the end of the last great epoch before the one that we're living in now, which some would say that we're coming to the end of. And it's interesting because as the myths and legends go about Atlantis, it fell due to the race falling into sin again, if you will, because of the misuse of technology. It's one of the big things you keep coming up against in the mythology.
Is it technology or is it power or is it both? The misuse of technology and power, or just the misuse of technology?
Well, if Tesla said,
I love Tesla.
If Tesla says, if you want to understand reality better, think of everything in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Right.
If that is the case, what is the difference?
It doesn't matter.
Right. I was listening to an interesting podcast just the last couple of days or so, and there was a spiritual teacher from Australia, Kavashilis, I think is his name. I hadn't heard him in years. So he's a pretty intelligent dude. But he said, I don't like the term artificial intelligence. I like the term technological intelligence. Because if you understand / understand the truth that we are not alone in the universe, whether that is space or time or both, there is intelligence in the universe that birthed us, that watches over us, if you will, and that also governs all the other realms of the universe, because we know that we're not the only one. And if you can buy that, then you must buy the fact that this intelligence is there in the universe somehow, and it has a technological framework. We have a biochemical carbon framework. So-called artificial intelligence has a technological or electronic framework. That's the world that
so our God is
lives
an AI.
in. Or the devil. or both. Or both.
Because we have free will and we can choose whether to.
Which is what they mean by this in the Atlantic myth. They talk about the misuse of technology.
Right. And it's happening again, the cycle.
And addiction to such technology.
And so knowing that, what you just said, misuse of Atlantis, go back to what you just said about Atlantis, that just makes sense. So I think I told you in our last discussion in California, my spiritual center that I got connected to was Science of the Mind with Ernest Holmes. And that opened up a whole new way of talking about God, because the word God always bothered me because I didn't see people acting godly or like Jesus, walking like Jesus.
Yeah.
It always bothered me. And their philosophy is there's a power in this universe that's greater than all of us, that created us, that's, and we can all use it. But my question to my reverends were, but it doesn't always be used for good. And that kind of upset a few people until they started thinking about it. I said, well, think about it. If it's an energy and it's available to everybody and we can all use it, then you can have Hitler come in. And, or you can have mass murderers come in, and that's the energy that they've decided the free will that they've decided to tap into. And then you can have your Jesus and your Buddha and your Muhammad and all the other visionaries and teachers, because they're all teachers. Well, what do they choose to tap into? Deepak Chopra talks about it in one of his very first recordings. You said you did a whole podcast on our ancestors, and I don't know, I just feel like living in America right now, people don't have a lot of respect for the elders. But let's not go down that rabbit hole. Let's talk about what does the rabbit hole mean to you? When you say, oh, I'm going down that rabbit hole.
Well, it's interesting because the word rabbit has the same sound in it as the word radish and the word radical.
Oh.
And so the word rabbit hole is perfect, because what is a radish? A radish is a root, which is where we get the word radical, because when you're radical, you get to the root of the issue. So when you go down the rabbit hole, you're getting to the root of the issue.
I love that.
The rabbit hole is, yes, the rabbit hole is deep. It's deep. Alice goes deep. So going to the rabbit hole is not being afraid to face the truth.
She also took a little pill.
Not being afraid to face the truth. That's another way of saying it, going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. So is that something you came up with about the root, the radish, and the? Well,
I have a whole lecture on that. That's called The Language of Light. It's on it's on our Patreon page right now.
Okay.
Then I have an abridged version that I might put on the YouTube channel. But
I'd like to hear that.
It's I'll give you a taste. It's a study. It's a study of a lot of things. It's a sort of broad esoteric umbrella, but the kind of focal point of the particular talk is the Egyptian word for the sun god, which is Ra, or in long form, Amen Ra, which is the word that they use in the church today for hymns and prayers is Amen. At the end of the hymns and prayers, they say Amen. I grew up singing in the church. I know this. I've said it and sung it a billion times in my life. Amen is an Egyptian word. Ra is the sun god of ancient Egypt. And how that sound has found its way into our languages over time. Because it's whatever the Egyptian wisdom was honing in on, the sound that they came up with to represent the God of creation, the light, the absent, is the sound that you hear in nature.
And what moved the pyramids, evidently, was the light.
Right.
Did they have the ability to pull that in and know that?
And you think about the theories about the pyramids being electrical portals, that they're not just these big blocks of stone, and much in the same way that maybe the ancient cathedrals were the same thing. And my God, if we had 6 hours for the next 6 days to talk through all these subjects, and we'll keep doing it, but it's unbelievable how that word turns up, that sound, Ra.
Even in Kirtan, doesn't it? There's a
Well, with the chanting. But I'm talking about in the actual language that we speak every single day. It's literally from the word rain all the way to, the name Brian and everything in between. And the country Russia and Ukraine and Iraq and Iran and Saudi Arabia and Colorado and Brazil and France. It is everywhere. The word Ra, the sound Ra.
Wow.
And because the ground is brown, and then you get green grass when the Ra shines, and then the rain comes out, and then you get branches from the brushes and the trees that have fruit, which are oranges and broccoli, and we don't call those trees, they're from somewhere else, but strawberries and raspberries, and all of these words have Ra in them. All of them. And then you look at what else grows out of the ground? Grain and rice. Both of those words are Ra words. And what do we make with that? We make bread. And then what happens when the fruit falls too far from the tree? It gets dry or rotten. And if we have a whole harvest that goes dry and rotten, we have a drought.
So are you saying that people that created the language?
I'm saying that the language is created through the DNA. It's built in because it's the language of light. It's that we are speaking in the language of the universe. It just takes different tongues. The old verse, the old scripture about speaking in tongues is not about swallowing your tongue and having a seizure and spinning around in your head. It's about the organic morphing of the God's natural energy. We all speak. Humans all speak. It's just different tongues.
Yeah. We're all, okay.
French is just a different version of. But what I found interesting in the English language is what I came up with through this study was that there was this theory, if you will, this hypothesis that the English language is actually way, way, way more ancient than we were taught in school. That it's not just this derivative of the Romance languages, Spanish, French, Russian, Italian, German, and Latin, but it actually has grown out of something more ancient. And that's why you look at ancient Egypt, which is more ancient than that. And there it is, because you see the connection to the word Ra, and then you think about Atlantis, and you go, okay. And then you consider the fact that the English language itself is spoken around the world more than any other.
It's true.
And having traveled a lot at one point in my life, this came to be known to me very, very provable. It was like I felt bad most of the time because they spoke my language and I did not speak theirs, all these places that I went. But anyway, I don't know why I got on that kick, but you asked about the rabbit hole and the radish and the rattle.
That's interesting.
You go to the word, the sound of the light of creation is in that word. A radish is a root, like something that grows close to the ground, like broccoli, carrots, and radishes. They all have Ra in the word. They have a particular relationship with Mama Earth. They're right there, rooted on the ground, so they have a particular rich kind of nutrient. And then the fruits that come off the trees and the shrubberies, another Ra word, shrub, it is a different kind of energetic. The fruits and vegetables that come from different branches. The Ra is in the word branch too. And then the grains, it's all these different manifestations. You think about the food that grows out of the ground. Is that any different than the languages that we speak? If we grow out of the earth, we're born out of the earth. How's any of this resonate with you? I'm kind of running my mouth down.
No, I'm real curious. What comes up for me is to go back to the origins of whoever created these words. Who are these? It's kind of like, who are that? You said that the AI was being fed, and I said, by whom? So I go back, and I always want to know the origin. So these people that were creating the words rose and rabbit and radishes and all of that, do you think they were conscious of this light frequency, Ra, Egyptian theory? Because I've always thought that the Egyptians knew how to manipulate light,
right,
to control the light.
Yes.
And maybe Atlantis also. They said the Pleiadians.
Right.
If you go into
yes.
to all the different, I believe I'm from the Pleiadian culture or whatever
right.
you want to call it, or frequency.
Yeah.
That they knew, but then they misused it and their civilizations were destroyed. So I was always told there were certain words that had carried a really negative frequency. Like when you use the word I am, and you say ugly things about yourself. That's misusing the energy, not the word. And in the beginning, there was the word, and the word was good. That's a biblical.
Yeah. So I say at the beginning of the lecture, I say I make a comparison between the beginning of Genesis and the beginning of St. John. You just mentioned St. John. In the beginning was the Word, and of course, at the beginning of Genesis, in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light." In other words, there was a spoken sound.
Yes,
sound is at the base of it all. Mm-hmm. And so maybe one of your questions in there was about how is the language itself formed?
The origin.
I think it is all energetic. I think it is formed through us.
It's in their DNA.
It's formed through us, and the sounds. When you think about it, the sound of a motorcycle, or the sound of a cat purring, or the sound of even some appliances in our homes. It's the looping. If you took the letters R-A and then A-R inverted it and then looped it together, it would be that sound. If there's a sound to the underneath of all creation, maybe it's. Doesn't that sound like a motor to you?
So where does the people that think that Om was for Om?
Which is another way of describing it. In other words, Om is another sound that is obviously sitting at the foundation of the universe somehow, just like Ra is. We think, what does the sound of the lion make? Roar, and it is in the word right and the word wrong. Mm-hmm. Because in the physical reality, in the duality we live in, where we're dealing with right and wrong, but the light is just light. The light doesn't think about right and wrong.
Our free will, our consciousness creates, our energetic consciousness creates. Now, that is fascinating. I'm just going to be so careful from now on.
Back to something you said, because I want to pick your brain more about it, and tie it into more about your background and upbringing a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe 10 more minutes.
Okay. This is fun.
Because you mentioned some names that are popular nowadays in the New Age circles, if I may use that term. Mm-hmm. You said there were Pleiadian, Arcturian. I'll throw that one in. Mm-hmm. Such terms as that, star systems and beings from other places. Star
seeds, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
What do you make of it all? How does it tie into your background from California? I have to ask because I was born there. Mm-hmm. I didn't grow up there, but I have roots, and I know that it is one of the New Age capitals of the planet, in many, many ways.
It is.
But I'd like to just kind of get your overall take on not only what all that stuff means, perhaps, but also maybe your take on the charlatanism that surrounds it these days around the interwebs.
The
woo-woo.
The woo-woo.
Because I know that woo-woo is something that you're familiar with, and therefore you can comment on it. Because when I've worked with you, because I've heard you say, just to preface it, I've heard you say, "Oh, I'm into woo-woo," but so far, every time I've worked with you, I have not felt that way about it. I have not thought that was woo-woo. So I'm really curious to hear your take about the woo around the New Age movement, this idea that we're not alone, which I agree with. However, I also think it may be a little much, just to maybe color the question a little more. People say that they can channel such beings and, talk in these other voices.
Dimensions. Yeah, it's all over YouTube. You can just type in.
I feel, for example, I feel like 2 out of 5 are just total frauds.
Right. I believe what you do with your sound, and I think I told you this last time we talked, you are channeling a higher frequency that most of us can't hear, most of us can't see it, and we can't feel it until we're in your presence and you bring it into our lives. and even Mike, who is very, very cautious about any mention of Christ, Jesus, or the Bible because of his upbringing. You know, we're all a part of who we were when we were growing up. He said, "Where is that coming from?" And I said, "Where do you think it's coming from?" He said, "From another dimension." You know, he's not making that up. I mean, he's really into recognizing fraud, which...
He's got a big bullshit meter.
He does have a big bullshit.
So you said you connect to the Pleiadians. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, I'm not really sure Pleiadians. Maybe I just read one of their books and I thought, oh, that feels kind of like me. I grew up in Arkansas. My dad was from Paris, Arkansas. My mom was from Idaho, so she brought that consciousness with her. But I grew up in Fort Smith, Arkansas, with a fabulous doctor that, now that he's gone, I realize that he was way ahead of his time, but he had to hide it, which so many of us do when we say that we know things. Like you said earlier in our talk, that you saw this years before. You started feeling it, and, you know, where does that come from? And we give it words, like channeling, or mystic, or a visionary, or psychic. We put words to it, and then we put meaning to it, right? So as a little kid, my sister sent me a whole package of a whole box full of pictures when we were little, and I'm probably smiling in any of them. It's like I had this look on my face like, what in the hell am I doing here? You know, it's like, and I always was kind of scared of my dad because he was so big. He was like 6'4", and he was worshipped by a lot of people in the community. I had to be really careful about what I saw and everything. But he was the person I always went to when I had experiences, and he was able to explain it in such a way that was kind and understanding and scientific. Today, they would have said, oh, he was woo-woo. You know, he secretly took acupuncture classes. He secretly took hypnosis. He practiced on my sister and I. We were his guinea pigs. But in the, I'd say middle 60s, there was an experience in Fort Smith with UFOs, and you can still Google it. It was seen over Kansas, Mississippi, Texas, Arkansas. And my group of friends were all a big part of that, of experiencing it. Hearing the scientific part, but hearing that, hey, there may be life on other planets, and we've all just witnessed it, you know, in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Right.
And I went down that rabbit hole of deeper understanding and wanted to know can they come get me and take me back? In my mind, I thought, I don't belong here. Mm-hmm. And I would get up on the roof and start doing this with my flashlight. You know, you can get me now. Mm-hmm. I'm ready to come home. I didn't know what to call it. Mm-hmm. I just felt that energetically and vibration-wise, I was not vibrating with Fort Smith, Arkansas, if that makes sense.
Right.
So then my dad sent me to a girls' school, and then I went to the University of Arkansas, and I'm trying to think, that's when I first got introduced to the Chinese, what's that called? With the little things that you roll out. Okay, my mind's...
Oh, the runes?
Yeah, the runes.
The runes, gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was relaxing too much over here listening.
Well,
it's the runes, I guess.
The runes, people from California came and stayed with us. They were hitchhiking, and we picked them up, and they started talking about the Tao and all that stuff. And I was like, whoa. And then we dropped some acid, and then we did some mushrooms, and then I'm going, whoa, this is like... Then I landed up after my son was born in 1977, landed up out in California. And when I got off that plane, there was just a knowing. I got down and kissed the ground. Yeah. I really did, and I went, I'm home. I'm here. I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm kind of afraid. I've never been out of the Midwestern consciousness, but I'm going to learn a lot here. And got into drumming. This was probably one of my biggest experiences with the Pleiadians. I'm going to just call it the Pleiadians. I don't know any other word for it, but we did a drumming, full moon drumming. There was 13 of us, women. And we did it every month. And this one particular time, I just went out of my body. And 4 other people did too. And we came together. We were light beings. And we danced to the drumming. We all could see it. Everybody saw it. And when we finished, I went back in, and my husband was asleep, and I laid down beside him, and all of a sudden this light came in through the window and lifted me up, literally lifted me up, and there was a council of 12. I remember there was 12, and they were giving me this message. I didn't understand it, but it was coming through me, and I knew that I was trying to transmit it to my husband. And I thought, man, you are real. We didn't take any drugs. We didn't do anything. All we had were rhythm and sound, like the Indians did, you know, with the chanting and everything. And next thing I knew, I'm back on the bed, and I'm punching him, and I said, did you not hear me? Did you get any of that? And he goes, woo woo. Woo. Everybody would always say woo woo. And I know. And I went for years to hypnosis, to psychics, to anybody to tell me what the message was that they gave me. I did regression, hypnotic regression. Never could get to it, and it bothered me for a really, really long time. And then one time I was at a retreat with some women up at Gray Eagle, which is a place where all the Indians were buried, and very precious in California. And I couldn't sleep, and I got up and turned on the TV on the Discovery Channel. And there was this thing about the exact date that this happened with me, that people all over the world reported having this light experience and conversations. Mm-hmm. So then that put me even further down the rabbit hole.
Right.
And I don't know when I gave up on it. I don't think I've ever given up on it. There's always moments that I think about it, and especially what's going on in the world right now. But for some reason, I gave that council, a lot of people would have called the Brotherhood. Right. I gave it the Pleiadians. And really, what does Pleiadian mean? Does it have something to do with the light? I never looked into that part of it, but, well, I'll ask ChatGPT when I get back home.
You could get a very, very clear and very elaborate answer.
And I'll copy and paste it and send it over to you. But you asked
ChatGPT. ChatGPT, write me a symphony. Thank you.
Oh, and it will.
I know. It will do one in the style of Mozart, in the style of Schubert, in the style of it's crazy. I'm shifting gears. I don't want to get back. I want to get back to the Pleiadians because I want to. Because hearing about California is so cool. I mean, because obviously you have had experiences along the way that led you to make the decisions that you made.
Yeah.
To take all the training that you did, and because you've told me you've taken a whole lot of training that you didn't necessarily, practice on a daily basis, but you just wanted to learn.
I did. I wanted to help my friends and family.
Right, like Reiki and all the somatic stuff.
Yeah, I did, and it's crazy with all the certificates I have, and they don't. It's like, jack of all trades, but not a master of any.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, I've been able to help people with that energy work. Like I said, with my breath work, I've been doing that since the day I was born. We all have.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to know, when I was sad or in pain or whatever it was, physically or emotionally, how I could get myself out of it. And I didn't have to rely on other people, and I didn't have to blame other people.
Yeah.
And so I worked on myself all the time. And that's when people would go, oh, that's just Diane. She's just woo-woo. And I had a dinner party when my daughter came in, and they were all talking out on the deck. My daughter came from California. My whole grandkids and everybody still live back there. I came back to Arkansas in 2014 to help my mom transition. But they were all talking about something that I did. Mike brought it up, and they go, oh, that's just Diane. She's just woo-woo. I mean, but they say it lovingly. They're not attacking me. It's just like, she's different. My mom thought that when I came back, but I was able to help my mom transition using Reiki, hospice Reiki. And honestly, that changed everything about how I see death and birth. Because when I was working on her, so when we're born, the energy comes in through the crown and down the chakras, and then we take our first breath. And when we die, it starts shutting down from the womb, from the feet. So the feet will be the first to go. They'll keep looking at the feet, because they can tell that it's moving, and you can start seeing it. And to see my mom open up, and it was like the top of her head opened up, and it was like the vagina. And I'm going, oh my gosh, you know, we give birth through the vaginal wall, and when we leave, the crown opens up. And it was so crazy, you know, but so joyful, because I knew she was going to be okay. That consciousness that was her body wasn't going with her. That's just a skin suit that we put on.
It's just a biological, is a biochemical computer suit.
Yes, yes.
And we're plugged into it very, very, we're hardwired for the time being. We're plugged into it. It's, you know, I've always said we can't jump out. And like you've mentioned out-of-body experiences, we know that those are possible. And sometimes we go into astral while we're sleeping, those who are able to dream well. But while our heart is still pumping, we're going to be back in this bodysuit, whether we like it or not, right. Which is where yoga comes in, because we got to be comfortable in our own suit.
And I was going to ask you, we are kind of flipping around, but things that you say really stimulate what I want to ask you, because you are way into yoga. And I've heard wonderful things about you ever since I moved back to Arkansas. But is it not true that each chakra has a sound attached to it, like the om, the ra, the...
Right. Sometimes you hear it as different soft syllables in front of the word, like lam, ram, yam, sam. There's that version of that you hear in sound in chakra meditations, where they use different sounds, and the different, I don't even have them memorized right now, but each one goes with a different the 7 chakras.
And so they would, being in alignment with what you're talking about with the light and the frequencies, that was created out of somebody's consciousness, that they understood that the word lam had a vibration and frequency that went with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all energetically like anything else. It's in other words, the formation of language and tone and sound, it is no different than where a chant comes from. It's coming from the same source, and which is to say, if you will, that ancient Egypt, the culture of ancient Egypt, was enlightened to the extent that they were, in a general sense, they were tapped into this light, this energy, this essence of nature and God, whereby where the building blocks of civilization began, there they are, and it shows up in the language and the traditions and the way that the alchemical body is built today, even though we may not be exactly the same organism as those people. I think we're way more contaminated and devolved in a way.
So the Egyptian society, culture, how was it taken down? Was that because of the misuse of power and technology?
Yeah, it's a good one. I don't know. I'm not the scholar on that by any stretch, for sure.
Be interesting. Rome.
It sounded like a corruption took place. If we're to take the story of Moses leading the tribe out of Egypt, is a way of saving the civilization in a way, because some sort of corruption or another had taken place, because Moses was known to have been in most of the esoteric circles, and maybe even some biblical circles, to be some sort of pharaoh. And again, I'm not talking literally here, I'm talking literarily.
Okay.
Because these scriptures have perennial wisdom in them, whether they are factually, historically real or not, and this is the important point. We know factually that ancient Egypt has a realness to it. We know that it was there, and there's some connection. But to use the scriptures, because it's such a valuable source and it's so rich in explaining esoterically, perhaps what had happened. Some sort of corruption took place, and I believe that the corruption that was taking place was Luciferian in nature, and I believe, i.e. satanic in nature, to use that other word. And I think it is part and parcel of the same energetic infiltration that is at the root of the infiltration of the Freemasonic lodges today.
And what's happening now?
Well, because the Freemasonic lodges are at the highest levels, are in charge of the world. This is indisputable. And they go back, their symbolism goes back to ancient Egypt. It's all traceable, so we know this. And I think the corruption that took place in ancient Egypt is the same corruption that corrupted the lodges. In other words, they are one and the same. Because at one point in our glorious history, human history, we had the great esoteric knowledge, and it was widespread and shared. We knew how to tap into the Christ within. Immediately we had the technology, the energy, the ritual, the ceremony, the sounds. We knew how to do it on a wide scale. We were a more enlightened culture. And through that culture grew this infiltration, or in came this dark energy that took it over, which is to say, I believe that the dark forces, and it's right there in the letters of St. Paul, I believe that those, because he says it, we battle not against flesh and blood. And I said this at lunch the other day. But powers and principalities, dark forces, forces of darkness in high places. In other words, they have been there for thousands and thousands of years. This is not something new. It's just a new form of it. It's like when you hear people say things aren't getting worse, they're just becoming uncovered.
They're becoming uncovered. And that gives me hope for what's happening to our country's very young. It's like a toddler compared to ancient civilizations and world leaders. I mean, France, Germany, Italy, they all have history. They all have lessons upon lessons upon lessons of corruption, but most of them have righted the wrong. And I keep thinking there is a satanic force right now that has taken hold.
And I'm saying it's been there all along, because come on, the devil's been around forever. It's not some new concept, the fallen angel, because God is eternal.
Yeah.
And so this concept, and it's not really a concept, the way people may describe it conceptually, but there is no doubt that there are fallen forces, and those fallen forces have their leaders, and those fallen forces have their minions, and they turn up in all the symbology and all the history, and in the scriptures. They're in the Bible. These Baal Moloch worshippers that are in the Bible are the same tribe that is running the show today. I'm not afraid to say it. And they hide behind all the religions. They hide behind all the governments. They hide behind the banks. They hide behind education. They take themselves out of the history books because they've been doing it for. This is not some.
Eons.
This is not. Yes, this is not some new faction of the mafia that just came into control because they pulled the right strings over the decade. No, this has been the same dark force that St. Paul himself was telling us.
I agree.
And now we are seeing it in its technocratic form. We can.
Technology has facilitated it.
When a child can click a trackpad or a mouse and within seconds be bombarded with pornography it should never see, yet at the same time we don't have the skill of the technology to track down the people that are trafficking children around the room and stealing them and doing horrible things.
We really do have the technology.
Well, of course we do, but obviously
we're not using it.
There is misuse of it.
Misuse of it.
If we have the technology to do such ridiculousness, then surely we can figure out a way to catch the kid, the child. I gotta be careful about words because the algorithms suck these days on the video platforms.
I've known you long enough to know that that's a real passionate thing for you, is this child, all these things with children, and me too. And my daughter is in a nonprofit in California, and that's what she does. She's a manager. She takes these kids that have been abducted and they get them back, and she finds places for them to be safe. You know, our children in this world right now, the little children, she'll lead us. You know, Jesus for me was one of the most incredible teachers that ever walked the planet. He got everything about love, what it takes to be loving and kind, and how that shows up and manifests everywhere. And that this is happening to the littlest and the smallest and the weakest and the most vulnerable of us. The shootings, everything bothers me tremendously. And she was telling me that California, I said, well, there's not that much in California right now. She said, Mom, it is the hub of child abuse and kidnapping right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley and Hollywood? Come on.
Yeah, it's
Silicon Valley and Hollywood, forget about it.
and the billion. I don't know. I mean, it's crazy, and I keep thinking, well, if all these. That's why I kept asking you, what do you think was the downfall of these civilizations, and are we going to be
corruption,
next?
evil?
Yeah, corruption.
And evil is corruption of the flesh. It would be one biblical way of putting it. It's when all flesh is corrupted. In the days of Noah, when all flesh became corrupted, God just had to, as the myth goes, God just had to wipe it out. And which is to say, and it's interesting when you think about that line, because what is, I may be posing it as a question, but it's really how I feel about it. But what is the devil's greatest weapon? It's materialism.
And fear.
The flesh. It's the flesh. It's materialism. It's the physical world. It's all the stuff that's part of our physical reality, i.e. this world, that the devil is largely responsible for shaping and forming. But the devil's biggest weapon against us is that itself, is turning our own physical nature against us. Whether that means the attraction and addiction to money and all the things that it brings.
Bringing disease into our bodies.
Just all the addiction and whether it's sex and everything in the physical world, where to the extent that many people in the modern world, at least from my humble yogic perspective, go from cradle to grave. Literally, we talked about this at lunch, literally thinking there's nothing more to it than just getting up, go to work, come home, feed my kids, go to bed, turn on the tube. And never once thinking, why am I here? Who am I? Where did I come from? What is God? What is good? What is, it's so...
But that's the rabbit hole. Why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? What is God? That's... So for me, that's not woo-woo. That's just really wanting to have knowledge.
I've been scratching my head about this stuff since I was 4, 5, 6, at least.
Looking at my baby pictures, I was
5, 6.
Yeah.
Old enough to kind of hold a conversation. I was going, what's going on here? I've always had, I've had a rough time, but I've got proclivities, and there's a track record there. It's on paper, it's documented. But my point is, my perception has always been real. And by the time I was 11 or 12 years old, I was just going, there's something wrong here,
Well, and going back to this is flashing back, thank you, things that you're talking about are doing triggering things, but my dad's office had hundreds of books, and I would hear him talking to patients, and I would hear him talking to the pharmacist, who was his best friend, and he'd go, he would always tell my sister and I everything was between our ears. Everything was between our ears. That we could see things and know things. And I would hear him say to Dr. Laws, he'd say, "Oh, that's Mrs. Jackson. She's a little just give her a sugar pill." And so as a kid, I would see all these discrepancies between disease and all of this stuff. And I worked in his office when I was about 15. I would put the files in order. And my dad was a fisherman, and he would go with all of his other doctors in a plane to these different places like Alaska, and they had guides and everything. And he went on, they had 2 planes that went up. And I was doing the filing, and all of a sudden I just had this vision of a plane crash. And I started crying, and I said, my dad is dead. I went home to Mom, and I said, Mom, Dad's dead. And she gets a phone call that night, and he was fine, but the other plane went down.
Oh my goodness.
With the other doctors on it. And so my mom said, you will never talk about this again. This is what people in a biblical society do. They shut you down. The people in power, they shut you down. And I would write about past lives. I wrote a thing in my English class.
You would journal them? Mm-hmm. You would journal them?
It would be a paper that we got to write, and I would turn it in about reincarnation or past lives, and I got my paper with big F's on it and red writing. We do not discuss things like this in our school. And so the messages that were always sent to me as a child, it's a lot more flexible now. You probably had a lot more from your parents. They didn't shut you down, I hope. But I just learned to shut myself down. Don't think those thoughts. Don't see those things. Don't be woo-woo. Anyway, it's taken me a long time. But I'm like you. I see things. I feel things, and I'm not afraid to speak about it anymore. I mean, right. I see things going on in our world right now that are just absolutely batshit crazy.
The coolest thing, the other day at the sound session I had just last week, there were several people in the room. We had a little bit of sharing right at the end, like we do sometimes, and several people chimed in, and there were at least 3 to 4 people in the room that were describing seeing colors and shapes and stuff like that. And I remember, ever since then, I was just like, I felt almost this envy. I was like, man, I wish I could. These people who experience stuff in this visual way, that I don't do at all. All I do is feel the vibration, which is a huge experience for me. That's the way I experience it, is I feel the vibration that's underlying the sound that I'm making or whatever. And then whatever goes along with that. If there's maybe there's a sting of a memory or a fantasy of the future that passes through the meditative process. But most of the time I'm trying to lock in. But there's none of this, but all this, the sensory perception of people and how different they all are, and how they experience things in color and shape, and because I experience things in sound and word and
channeling, and most channelers don't remember what they've channeled. They have to have it recorded by somebody. Right. So they can go back and they go, well, and some of them even have different voices. They different frequency in their voice boxes.
Yes, because you obviously have that part of your sensory makeup. There's a visual part because you described so many different ways in some of your stories. You seeing things, right? But real quick, I wanted to pivot and ask you about the breath work and talk a little bit to that. How long you've been doing it? What got you fired up about it? Why you love it so much, and why you're still doing it? Because you're not practicing Reiki on a regular basis, but you are doing breath classes, and so that has a special meaning for you. Maybe I just want to hear a little bit about that.
Oh, okay. Well, I've told the story every time we have a new group. They say, how long have you been doing breath work? And I say, since 1947 in Fort Sam Houston Hospital.
Right.
And when my mom gave birth to me, I was happy, minding my own business. I was in this beautiful, fluid movement and minding my own business. And then I was just forced out into the bright lights back then. The bright lights and everything, and people were yelling and slapping you on the butt. And we call that the first trauma. And my dad, this is another thing, my dad was so good. He threw me in a swimming pool. They have a picture of me, him throwing me off the diving board. I was 3 years old, sink or swim.
And that's diving board?
He was on a diving board, and he threw me in, and I went under. And I just came right back up, and for 12 years I was on the swimming team, and they put me in as a long-distance swimmer. So I always knew that I had control of the breath. But then when I got into high school, there was this thing that started going around. I don't know where we had it because we didn't have social media. Right. But that if you breathe real heavy, you could and hold your breath, you could pass out.
Yes.
Did you do that? And
I remember hearing that.
Well, we did that, and I think I passed out in front of my principal of the school, and he said, "Now, Mary Diane, this isn't too healthy." So
it's great.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just remember all my life, if somebody was upset, I'd say, you just really need to breathe. And, life, I had my kids, and, I learned to do the breathing through without medication, and the power of that. I always knew the power of breath, but I never knew that I could put a collective around me, and with that collective, we could build an energy field that we could all heal together. You were really fascinated with the power versus force charge.
Yeah, it's cool, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And, and I think, and what I'd like to do in the next one is, I guarantee you that out of 20 people, probably 10 of them all had a certain thing that they'd like to let go of. Whether it's anger or fear or judgment,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And I also guarantee you that about 10 of them had things they were grateful for and they wanted to bring more of that into their lives.
Yeah.
And so I did my first breath experience in the 80s. I did rebirthing. I did I was in the very first deprivation tank in Colorado Springs. I got to experience that. I think I told you the rebirthing scared me because it was very, very forceful. Hyperventilating and getting way too much balance with the carbon dioxide and the oxygen. So I kind of put that aside, but then I met Sophia Rise, all in California.
Yeah.
Colorado, California, Oregon, all those places.
Yeah.
And we did something called consciousness breathing, and I loved it. I just fell in love with it. I never had a design to be a facilitator. I just wanted to be a participant. I wanted to do my own journey. And then through the years, I just experienced different kinds. Scott Swank, I went away to a fasting for a week and experienced his ecstatic breath work. I loved it. And he and I have been talking because his is all through the mouth, and he's realizing that a lot of it has to be through the nose because it's the filter. I just really got fascinated on medical, scientific. You know, how is this working? How can this help improve? Can we get into drug rehab centers? This is how my mind works. Can we get into the prisons? Can we really help people? And you've experienced two groups that we've had. I believe the collective generates a force field that really lifts all of us. And the thing that's bothering me now that I've started talking about it comes with my phone in the room. It picks up on it, and now I get 10 invitations at least a day saying, would you like to be a breathwork facilitator? $7,000, $5,000, $10,000. And I'm going, what is going on? To me, that is the misuse of power and technology. And my dad, by the way, I know I'm talking about, I think my dad's here.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad's here. He bartered. He never turned anybody away for medical practice. He at 80 was still traveling with his black bag. And we got things like land given to us, chickens given
food, I was going to say lots of food.
Lots of food. We were never
clothes sometimes too, probably.
Yes. And they loved him. Protection from the police force. You know, the captain of the police force knew him.
My father growing up, sorry to interrupt, my father when I was growing up, he took many patients in Cajun country that couldn't afford to pay him, and then we would get a giant carrot cake would show up on the dinner table, or a baked red fish that was all pre-prepared, or all this random stuff, and people would just give whatever they could give because they couldn't get money.
They tithed, and I've had arguments with all of my spiritual leaders about tithing does not have to always be 10% of your money. It can be your time and your talent.
Well, it's really what it originally means. It has nothing to do with money. It has to do with your focus, your energy.
Mm-hmm.
Always be leaning in towards remembering why we're here. We're here to come back to God, to reconnect, to bring the kingdom of God back to earth and overcome this satanic infiltration that we're stuck in, and this debt slavery system that we've been living in as long as you have been alive, if not even longer.
Mm-hmm. Before.
You consider the Federal Reserve was opened in 1913.
I've been around. Well, Ram Dass said we're here to love, serve, and remember. Love, serve, and remember.
Remember. And there are a lot of people who love and serve that don't even get to the remembering part.
And I think a lot of the people in your, and I'm sorry I didn't come to the last one, but in a couple of times that I've been, it allows you to get into a space that is so peaceful and so disconnected from disharmony. And you just really remember who you are. You know, it's like, oh, this is how it feels to be disconnected from social media. This is what it feels to be disconnected from satanic thoughts and, you know, just kind of the awfulness of the world.
We're gonna keep digging down. This is fun. We're gonna pick this up right where we left off, and of course that's like 5 different angles, which is perfect.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you. Oh my gosh, now will I be able to sleep?